Hello and welcome to an episode of Casual Friday. I'm here with the Duck. As always, the show is brought to you by Woo. Links available in the description below. Happy BTC all-time high to everyone who celebrates. That list seems to be getting increasingly smaller and smaller as we are
Yep.
perpetually trapped in dogshit altcoins and trenches. Meanwhile, GBTC Grayscale 2.0 just hovers up all the BTC. That's fine. That's okay. Also, no, it's not just GBTC 2.0. It's GBTC 2.0 and then like a dude on Hyperliquid. So plenty of diverse sources of demand there. Did you also notice, just very anecdotally, I mean, we did the show on Friday talking about the next Bitcoin bubble and mentioned how these BTC leveraged holding vehicles essentially are just really starting to ramp up. And like my Twitter feed for the past week has just been a bunch of that type of
Yeah,
analysis.
it's
I'm
weird,
not
right?
saying it's like causative, like no one gives a shit about this show apart from our lovely viewers. We love you. Like in the grand scheme, we're not bankless, right? But it seems like people are generally paying more attention and starting to catch on to the importance and the risks associated with this mechanism. I mean, Nick Carter made a great tweet. And it was like, Low Strife made a thread, which I thought was really fantastic about like exactly how the mechanism works and the risks. Nick Carter was a bit more casual. He was like, look, guys, we know how this all ends. It's just the question of like how much BTC do they spit up before they have to spit it? Do they consume before they have to spit it back out? And I think that's
Yeah.
probably the correct framing. But obviously everyone's arguing and saying this time is different and no, you don't
Yeah, I mean,
understand. And yeah.
every time people come up with like an infinite money glitch,
Yes.
it just turns out that it's not an infinite money glitch.
Wait, this isn't
And
infinite money. It's anal sex. You know that one.
exactly. And I'm always surprised, right? Like when you hear something that is just too good to be true, like it's just never true. Like I don't
Yes.
understand how people can live life and just miss that. Like
Especially in crypto. Jesus Christ, people.
yeah,
Like the entire
it's
industry is built on people like selling that idea, you know?
so yeah, but I kind of agree with what I've read on the topic on Twitter, which is basically like that's the future problem. Um, but I don't think it's necessarily great. It's not what Bitcoin was made for when you think about it, right? Like it's the opposite of what Bitcoin stands for. We've argued this for a long time now. But it's bullish, so people don't give a shit, and that's gonna come back and haunt us in the future, but not now. So it's good.
Yeah, exactly. Just kick the leveraged can down the road.
Yeah, and
Just
we
see
do
what
need it.
happens. We
We
need
do
it.
need it.
Yeah,
Like every
absolutely.
cycle, we need to find like a flywheel that makes
Yes.
this thing run to crazy heights. It's the only way that we can make our living, dude. Like it's just how it is. Like this thing runs way too hard, and then it crashes way too hard, and you can make money on both sides. Like I'm not complaining on the trading aspect of it. If I was like an ideologist, I'd be all over this.
Yeah.
Like this, like if someone else wants to kind of like risk his money, his reputation, and other people are just gonna pile into the bubble and make me more wealthy, even while I tell them that it's a bad idea, I mean, then that would be my guest,
Thank
right?
you for your service. Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll see. I don't know how much. I mean, really, as you know, it's only when shit starts to go south that all the skepticism gets amplified. Usually, it's like too late. By the, like the whole GB, like people really started to understand what GBTC was when it was basically when it killed half the industry.
Yeah.
That's when it became sort of publicly popular. So there's a lag effect there. But for now, keep the good times rolling. I suppose as long as you're at least acutely aware that it's unlikely to be and like it's not a financial glitch. We haven't remade. There's no alchemy, so to speak, in finance. It's just kind of there's just like fraud, debt, and leverage.
Yeah, that they're trying to tell you that they can cook shit and turn it into gold, but it's just gonna be at the end of the day, it's just gonna be cooked shit. I'm
It'll go
sorry.
back to shit. Yeah. The chart, though, that's a good chart, which just froze as soon as I said that. So thank you, TradingView. Week left until the monthly close for those of you
Yeah,
who celebrate, which should be
looks so
everyone.
good on the monthly.
Yeah, my trading view is still stuck loading, by the way. This is actually hilarious.
Yeah, I hate when that happens. You're just stuck talking about something that doesn't
No,
appear for
dude,
like 20
it's
seconds.
literally stuck. I don't know what's going on. Do we have to?
I just described how it looks like.
Yeah.
So there's one green candle, and then there's the next green candle next to it.
Fuck.
No, it just takes a little bit.
It's never taken this long.
Well, we're just gonna look at a
I don't even know
loading
any
chart.
other charting websites. That's how strong the monopoly is. What, you want me to make a trend spider account? While
I
I...
mean,
Oh my god.
yeah, well, that's just how it goes.
Dude, this...
We can just talk about something
I
else.
remember what the chart looks like, yeah. Oh my god.
But yeah, no, I mean, just generally, we've kind of had like a strong breakout, and it's gone up on all time frames, really.
Yeah. I've hacked
So,
around it, by the way. I opened up Velo, and...
I mean, Chad.
I mean, they don't have the monthly time frame, which actually I respect. So we've got the weekly.
They took all my edge away.
I know, you can't trade this. It's not allowed.
But yeah, basically the monthly is probably gonna close a breakout. Would be good if we had a chart, but it's just how it goes. The weekly time frame is also really nice. Like, we've had a range here between like November 24 that and now, basically, that like broke down prior in March 2025, broke down, and we've reclaimed it and then broken out on the other side. Now the risk is obviously that this just starts ranging, right? So we had like a false breakdown, and now we have a false breakout. We go back in the range, just go sideways. That'd be a little bit boring. But generally speaking, at least for me, it doesn't really make much sense to be bearish before that is confirmed, right? Like, I've seen too many people lose all their money trying to anticipate a false breakout or a false breakdown. I usually tend to want this thing to fail before I flip my bias, and so far so good, right? Especially with the trend that we've had, which has just been hilariously bullish. When you zoom out on the weekly a little bit, you don't really see any pullbacks, right? There were obviously a couple where we went down like 10-20%, but in the grand scheme of things, we basically ran up from 16K to 110K in a straight line. And people are bearish right now. Like, I see a lot of people that are bearish. I think they are bearish because they don't own Bitcoin, and they're kind of just coping about the fact that altcoins have not been going up, so they're just kind of like making their positions and their money fit their narrative. But yeah, it just looks good to me on both high time frame charts, monthly and weekly, just very decent.
Yeah. I mean, I remember when all-time high breaks used to mean something, Don, don't you?
Yeah, as in you're a little bit sad that we didn't break out and just run.
I mean, I think we spoke about this on the show a while ago, that like all-time highs have been turned from being acceleration gates to like sticky resistance levels.
Yep,
And that's really
Tra-
annoying.
Yeah, it's strat market stuff.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
you
it
look
really
at
is.
gold. Remember, like when gold was sticking around the all-time high, it just didn't do shit,
Yeah.
and like needed to test it 6 times or something before it actually started breaking out. We're kind of in the same regime now.
No, completely. But it also like there are people selling in size around the all-time high, right? They'd have to with
Yeah,
the amount of hoovering up of the BTC being done by ETFs. Obviously, some of that is for the basis trade, but whatever, that's like delta neutral flow. But also all these like leveraged public gambling companies. I mean, they straight up have directional exposure, and they're just like eating the BTC from like spots from the open market, and people are clipping into them essentially. Otherwise,
yeah,
I mean, again, as we discussed last week, it's caused a lot of people to like go full conspiracy on there being paper Bitcoin and stuff like that. That's the extent of the disbelief that why isn't this a 200K type thing. In terms of the TA side of it, so once like the move is kind of like one portion of the move already played out, right? And it's the one you argued for most clearly on your weekly show and even on Twitter, which was in super simple terms, like 93K is reclaimed, other side is 104K, roughly, right?
yeah,
And that's basically what it did. It's also the old classic, like these bearish retests don't work on BTC, etc., and it basically in one candle, to be honest, went from range low to range high. And then we closed above it last week, and that's kind of where we're hovering now. So there's nothing dodgy about the construction as it is at the moment, at least on a weekly closing basis, right? Like obviously like tariffs and fucking hyperliquid and all these local things have an effect. But if you were just charting the course of this at the moment with the available evidence, it's like breakdown, reclaim, breakout, you know?
Yeah.
And if you had to chart a path of progress for this thing, that's kind of what it would have to look like. Especially after the breakdown, it's okay. What's the next best thing? Reclaiming it. Okay, we did that. What about after that? Well, no resistance at the mid range. Okay, did that. What about next? Closing above the range high. It's kind of like tick 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 at the moment in terms of the progress the weekly chart has made. But I agree with you. I think if the first kind of turning point and the shift in, I mean, this look at just the number of green candles, right? Not to get too analytical about it, but it's just been green for many weeks in a row. So like the number is going up. I think the earliest like technical sign, as you mentioned, of okay, we're gonna take a bit of a breather after what 8, 7 green candles in a row would be this all-time high breakout getting stuffed. And not only getting stuffed in there being like an intraday wick or whatever else, but I think weekly close below 104. As you mentioned, because that would be the first sign that like, oh, this roadmap of break this, don't resist there, break this, it's shifted on a high time frame. And then I think at least the convenient part is you're back to the same levels that we had during the previous range of like 104, 94, and like 99 midpoint or something. It's just the same trading levels with TLDR, like the market's not quite ready yet. Do you think there's any other color on the weekly? Or at least here's an interesting one. If it were to close back below 104K, how bearish of a signal is that? Is it like, oh, fuck, like we're trapped, all-time high spike, etc., like much lower? Or is it more technical, like, we'll probably range and summer slow down, but the grand scheme of things, it's not that scary? Where are you on that spectrum?
It's actually really hard to say. I would like to say, like, okay, I mean, it's a little bit of an unfair situation that we're in, right? Basically, Bitcoin went from the low to the high, where it's right now, in only green candles on the weekly time frame. Didn't take any time to consolidate or pull back or anything. So you'd expect and kind of like give it a little bit of room to pull back, right? You get 7 weekly candles in a row. You have to at least be like, okay, you can pull back like a week or two. The problem is that we've kind of broken the all-time high in a way where it would kind of be bad if we started like breaking structure again. And if you zoom out a little bit and go towards like 2021, and I think that's basically the bears, what they're looking at, where we had the high and then we made a new high above it. And if you take the closes, right, you just draw a line from the highest close to the right. And this was the argument that we both made back then. We had that breakout, right, that weekly breakout in 2021 above 60K. And then when we lost it back then, we were both like, okay, now you have to be on the defensive. And the entire thing just fucking died. And if you compare that structure to where we are right now, it's actually quite similar. The pullback from the first high made a low, bounced a little bit, and then made a new low on a closing basis, right? You look at the structure that we just put in. We made the high, we made a low, made a high, and then made a lower low and bounced off of it. Did the same thing, basically just straight up ran all the way back to the high, and then showed some sort of weakness above the breakout level, right? So like anyone that looks at like fractals or like anyone that compares the past to present has to be like looking at this a little bit closer. I think it's quite quite a good comparison. I generally think it's probably still gonna go higher, but I like when it breaks 104K, I think you have to be quite nimble. You have to be ready to be like, okay, maybe we're gonna pull back for longer, or maybe even the cycle's over. So we're in this situation where it needs to put in strength, but it's already put in massive strength to get back here, which puts it a little bit in a risky situation. I'm personally still gonna just chill because I think it has more room, but I think it's worth noting that basically the exact same situation played out quite bearishly in the past. That said, that was also just there was a lot of fraud going on back in the day, right? Like you had basically the whole FTX debacle. They were selling customer Bitcoin, all that kind of stuff, that led to the whole down move. So you have to take it with a grain of salt. But chart wise, both of those things are quite similar to me. That's why I think like 104 is quite a good early warning sign. And if you're highly leveraged, I think that's a decently good invalidation to be like, okay, maybe I'll try another day.
That's such a FUD fractal. It's fucking crazy.
But it's so good, no? Like it's so clean.
Yeah, I mean, it's clean for sure. I mean, in general, weekly failed breakouts are miserable on BTC.
Yeah.
They're like the other side of the market equivalent of those failed support bearish retests. You know,
Yeah.
just in
And we
terms
haven't had any. We haven't had any on the weekly time frame. This entire bull market.
Yeah.
If you go through it, like there's not been a single false breakout. You could argue like in July 2023, maybe, but that really wasn't a breakout to me.
No, I mean, all the closes were basically at resistance, didn't push through.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, that's an interesting one. And then obviously the ETF consolidation of 71K just straight cleared it. So yeah, I mean, I think that's a pretty balanced argument. It's nothing radical. It's basically like weekly failed breakouts are high signal. Therefore, if this weekly fails to break out, that's a important signal. You know, like, and then you know you can never predict the second order effects that come into play as a result. But it should at least land you in a better position, right? Like even if you're holding a bunch of spot and you close your riskiest leverage and the market nukes, like even if you're down on your spot a little bit depending on your entry, or like you give up back some spot P&L, at least you've avoided like the worst case scenario depending on how the trade is set up. And you know there is a world in which the pullback, you know, let's say closes below, and then everyone's like, oh my god, failed breakout on the weekly, first time since 1846, like this whole thing is fucked. And instead it just like pulls back moderately and then makes its way back above the breakout level. Well, that's a new trade, you know, and it's a trade that's also like generally a pretty high hit rate pattern on high time frame BTC, which is like reclaiming the failed breakout level tends to make for a very attractive continuation. And I'd certainly like to have that optionality if the market sets up that way, you know, like if the weekly, and it could happen this week, it happened in 2-3 weeks, like no one knows, right? But when that weekly, if that weekly close comes into force, you essentially have some pretty cool options of a decently reliable signal to just trim some, but then also an opportunity to get back in a way that's pretty risk defined and equally clear, you know. Sometimes I've been trapped by this specific logic before, where there's like a failed breakout trade that happens, and whatever, I short or de-risk or trim long exposure in whatever form, and then I just spend all my time fishing for like a higher low, because technically the breakout, even if it's failed, is a higher high of sorts, right? So you could reasonably say, okay, well, if on this pullback, I'm going to look at the range low, or I'm going to look at the higher low level on like a 60-80% retracement, whatever. Just like you go fishing on the pullback, and then you basically just like, you know, worst case, it is actually a mega nuke, and you lose all of your money. Slightly less bad case is that you kind of get chopped up looking for a higher low, and the market kind of just turns to shit after a failed breakout, and it becomes very unpleasant to trade. Whereas if you're willing to pay a premium for the reclaim trade of the same level, it tends to be a lot smoother. I think a good example of this was one that was farmed on this show, which was like 18K at the bottom. Do you remember that one? Yeah. Wait, where am I looking? Holy shit. Oh, it was on the daily time frame, that's why. Yeah, it was like, I think I've roughly got it here. Yes, I mean, this looks hilarious in hindsight, but it was that November 2022 17.5K pattern, you know? And you can sort of go back and look at the rationale there. I traded this okay, probably could have done a lot better. I know you crushed this portion, or at least I think you did. Maybe I'm just creating.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's where
you were buying into it, no?
Yeah, I was buying all of this. Like the entire 16K range I was like, this is just gonna go up.
And you've been holding since then, obviously.
Obviously.
All your leverage, just paying funding and whatever. Yeah. But this is like a good example, right? You have a failed breakout, and then you're like, well, that's kind of shitty. And looking for a higher low there is, I mean, look at the candles. That is like a treacherous range and exercise and grind up, whatever. And then the actual acceleration happened not below the breakout level, but actually as soon as the breakout level was reclaimed on the 11th of January.
Yeah,
and
it was still a good trade.
It's still a good trade, right? Like you missed the bottom by quite a bit. You know, it was like 16.3 was the low after the failed breakout, and then whatever 18k was basically the breakout level, and you'd feel pretty terrible, like, oh my god, it's gone up so much, you know, 2k, which back in the day was a lot. Like it's gone up percentage wise from the low to the point of breakdown. It's like, you know, if you're buying the daily close, it's like almost a 10% premium. You're buying a market that's just rallied 10%, and that might not feel so good as from a sort of headline trading perspective, but then the actual move happened as soon as that level was reclaimed, and you probably saved yourself a bunch of chop and heartache and anxiety by just paying that premium. You know, it's like 18k, 17.5k is a really good example of that, and I think you can apply like similar-ish logic to the weekly time frame if you get a close below. And again, we're fully in hypothetical land because we haven't closed below, like we're above, you know, but who knows what happens to the market. And I think this will remain valid for me as a framework almost no matter what the price, just because it's like a pretty significant range high. So, you know, if it goes to like 120 and then does this, I still think it's actionable. I think if it goes from here to sub 104k, I still think that's actionable, which is why I'm spending so much time on it, at least. But I think the similar thing applies. Like, this is a very clear level. If it fails to break out, you can go fishing at the range midpoint, the range low, rebuy the wicks, whatever. But if you don't want to do that, you can just literally set an alert and set a mental note that failed breakout failure has been achieved. Send it. And you'll know pretty quickly whether you've been trapped twice or whether there's something there for you. So I quite like that roadmap. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, on the weekly, this is an excellent strategy.
Yes.
The lower time frame you go, the worse it gets.
Yeah, 100%.
Because, I mean, we've all seen the breakout and then false breakout and then breakout again and then another false breakout
in a row. Yeah,
on the 4 hour, and you might be asking yourself like, hey, what the fuck are these dudes talking about? I've seen this a million times. It's really bad.
Yes, you're right.
It is bad on the low time frames. It's really, really good on a weekly, and you can back test this. It's like, just scroll out, check how it's been performing. Weekly and monthly breakouts are generally high signal to noise. It's very, very rare that you, like, I mean, this literally on my edge in trading this market over the years, or like 90% of it has just been like zooming out a little bit and just looking at the thing objectively and being like, this has worked in the past. Let me just see if it's gonna work again, and it rarely disappoints.
Past performance does not guarantee future results unless you're a high time frame BTC trader, apparently.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it doesn't always work,
No,
but
sure.
I actually don't remember many high time frame fake outs like that. Like, if you go on the weekly time frame, you're gonna have troubles finding them, and you're gonna find a lot that have worked.
Yes,
that's all I'm gonna say.
No, I completely agree. And also, like, in line of this pattern, I mean, one example, this is not a great example, but that same high of April 21st, highest close, when that was eventually reclaimed 3 years later, it didn't work super well, but still kind of worked, you know? But that is 3 years later as an important proviso. And then if you look at, I remember trading my tits off on this one, the 11.5K, you can tell when my peak was, dog, by all my references. Like the 1866 wick on the CME, you know.
Oh, so good.
But like, this is also, in my view, like a really good example. The 11.5K 2019 level, where that was the high, we faked out above it, nuked a little bit. It nuked into a very good level, but still, look where the acceleration actually happened. It was really kicked off when the original fake out level was reclaimed. So there's something to this. And we could do this exact same exercise for the other useful high time frame pattern for BTC, which is retesting the sort of long-standing ranges from the downside, right?
Yeah, never works.
Just doesn't work. Like, if you're a bearish retest seller at 6K, you're getting mauled. You're getting run over. The other big one, I think, you could make an argument for something around like 7-ish, but I don't like it. I didn't treat it that way personally. The other obvious one is like 32K, right? Also, like big bearish retest, absolutely not. Gets fucking sent. And now we have another one in the form of the 93k reclaim going straight to breakdown and no retest going straight to the other side of the range.
Yeah.
Like
It's
I really
actually-
think if your capital and patience and trading strategies, whatever, allow for it, especially if you've got other stuff going on in your life, which none of us do, obviously, present company included, you could just trade BTC based on these two high time frame weekly patterns. And I hate claims like that because they're always like very influencer facing, like 2 strategies to, make your ex fall in love with you again or whatever. But I think if I had to choose, like the lonely, what's it called? Desert Island discs, where like you're stranded on a desert island and you can only have like 2 books or some number of albums to listen to or whatever. For me, my desert island BTC patterns would be these 2: failed breakout weekly, failed bearish retest weekly, and that's it. Like you're not gonna be led very, very far astray. Your trade frequency is gonna be really fucking low, so God forbid you fuck it up. It's like, oh, I moved to break even. It's like, okay, wait 6 months and try again. So like on the trading frequency side, it's not really helpful. You should have other strategies running in general if you want to trade actively. But in terms of just like sheer reliability and signal to noise, and also kind of giving you a bias for your other setups, I think this weekly stuff is still standing the test of time, which is rare. Like, this is trading. This is supposed to get eaten up like immediately if it's real edge, technically. But I
everyone
think
in crypto is a moron.
Well, yeah, definitely. And also, it's a time frame question, right? Like, if you have a millisecond, yes, absolutely. Like, dude, if you have like a millisecond edge or like a few seconds, you're gonna get eaten up, especially if it stands out. But like weekly time frame, like I think it's too big at a certain point. Like, you could arb something out intraday, or if you're counting in milliseconds or seconds or minutes or whatever. But like arbing something out on a weekly time frame is just a completely different exercise, So yeah, TLDR, Don said that if it closes below 104k, it's mega cyclical top confirmed, and there is no bottom.
No, I mean, we'll see. I could actually see pretty much exactly that happening again. 104k gets obliterated to the downside. We go to like whatever, 98, 97, 96, start ramping up again, and then break the resistance for real, and then never look back. Could see that happen. But there's always a risk that this plays out like it did in 2021. So it might pay to be a little bit cautious, even if you think that is going to happen, which I think the likelihood of 104k getting broken to the downside and then that pattern playing out, basically to walk up into full send, I think is quite high. But also the risk is decent enough that if we break 104k, you just get fucked completely. So might have to de-risk some at that point, might not. Like, you do whatever the fuck you want to do, but it's what I look at. It's a really interesting point. It's kind of funny because most people, I think, would have been like, or were bearish into that range retest, and we were both like, this just never works. Like, we were both talking about this on the show, like nonstop. Like, this just never works. These kind of retests. My level is even lower, like it's at 90k, and I was like, hey, we reclaim 90k. I mean, just send it, and it has. And now I think it's the opposite. It's true. Like, most people would be like, yeah, this can pull back, whatever. And I'm more in the camp of it really shouldn't. So we'll see how it goes. Maybe it's my back's talking. Like, I just don't want this to pull back, because I just want to make.
Don't want to have to trade. You're just like me, for real. Yeah,
for real. I just want to hold. I don't have the mental capacity right now. Like, I was sitting at like eating with my family earlier.
Yeah.
At the table, and like the baby was on my left, and our older child was to my right, and both were screaming, and I was like, yeah.
You were like, I need to lock into the trenches and find the daily runner,
Yeah, exactly. Like, just don't. I'm too old for this shit. So just run it so it's clear. Or if it fails, at least reclaim it quickly so it's still clear.
One thing is, all paths end up leading to 104 in one form or another. Not only because it's the all-time high, but like, if you're bullish right now / have longs right now, that's your early warning system. If you're super bear-tarded, that's your earliest confirmation that you're right. And then even if you're like neutral or leaning bull-tarded or whatever, if it does fail, you don't have to go fishing for higher lows. One of your best entry triggers will be the reclaim of 104. So
Most
like
likely, yeah.
that's the thumbnail clickbait title. It's just like there's one level on BTC or something like that. Obviously there are more, but I think
it's the only one that matters.
it's
right
really
now.
yeah. It's listen. I mean, it's a weekly chart, right? So like you're not going to get weekly setups or weekly levels that are relevant super often. Like the retest, the reclaim of 90k was one, and it got here pretty quickly. But that's because we'd ranged and done fuck all like through all of the winter, basically. And so these are worth taking seriously for the simple reason that they generally work high signal to noise ratio, and they're also not super frequent just because of how long it takes for the damn things to print. I think that's mostly it for BTC.
Yeah.
Has your ETH is basically in the same place where we did the last show. So
Yep.
I mean, I'd almost feel bad updating it. Which
Nothing's changed.
nothing's changed.
I mean, this is optimal in my opinion. Like the weekly chart for ETH is kind of like what you would want. We did talk about it last week, where it's like we want to hold 2.2k, and it's kind of like wicked twice to that region, 2.2, 2.3k.
Yeah.
And it's held, it's going sideways. Like you look at this chart in isolation, you're like, that's quite nice, and I like it. I still think as long as 2.3k holds, we're in the same situation where it just looks good. Like that's just a decent looking chart, and I would really like it to break the next resistance, the one that we've been struggling with, which is 2.7 ish, like around the 2.7k level. Then it would look excellent. But right now, like there's quite a good move, I would say, and it's broken the resistances it needs to break, and it's been consolidating the way it should consolidate before it goes higher. It just obviously also needs Bitcoin to hold 104k, because if Bitcoin doesn't, this probably doesn't hold 2.3k, and then we're kind of in a shit situation, at least on ETH. So, but generally same as last week.
Yeah. I mean, almost to the tick.
Yeah.
That said, there is a classical charting double top here, so it's all over. Have you considered that argument by any chance on the daily time frame?
I actually have not. Thank you for bringing it to my attention.
Please allow me to go AFK for 5 minutes as I reconstruct my entire portfolio.
Be right back.
Yeah, be right back.
And you hear me in the background like furiously typing.
Yeah, I watched the 1 minute chart. Just eat shit. That'd be hilarious. But no, it's the same thing. And we outlined the difficulty of someone who's a low time frame trader will be looking at 2.6, 2.8 differently to someone who's holding spot from lower, differently for someone who's flat. Like there are no kind of easy answers there, but structure wise, I don't think anything's changed. Where we had one good week and it's consolidating. Like we had an amazing week actually that broke one of the more important resistance levels, and now it's consolidating. I kind of agree that rather than dicking around with is 2.6, 2.8 going to break and whatever else? Like, if it breaks, I think, you can probably not feel terrible about paying a premium for it, hoping you get a redemption arc to 4K. Obviously, it depends on what ETH BTC looks like and what the Bitcoin breakout that leads to this also looks like, because I think that's the prerequisite, realistically. I don't think BTC is going to, like, stay around the range high, not accelerating, and then ETH just fucking melts up 3K plus. I mean, maybe,
that would be
but
great though. Actually,
I mean, it would take a while. I think maybe that's the alt season blueprint. Like BTC,
if Bitcoin turns boring and just holds above 104, maybe. Unlikely as fuck though. Like I would never expect it to, but maybe that does it. Be kind of fun. Imagine Bitcoin just consolidates around all-time high and altcoin send. I would like that.
Yeah, and then it breaks below and we die.
I mean that'd be the best ending. Like at that point, it's quite obvious, right?
Sure,
and I think that was kind of like the 2021 thing too, where the reason why we were both so aggressive about saying like, hey, 60k, like you can be like we should be bullish above 60k, but if it loses 60k again, I mean that's fucked. And the reason was not necessarily that the chart would look terrible below 60k. I've seen worse things. It's just because the altcoins were set up in a way where this would just make sense, right? Basically, like we had a bunch of altcoins giga rallying, with Dogecoin going, we had a bunch of the older coins, the boomer coins running, and like that all increases the chances of like the market just generally topping. So if you got that same situation now where we got like altcoins running, that would at least make the decision tree quite easy. Because if you get the same signal that you got 2021 with the same altcoin situation, I think that'd be a relatively nice trade to make. Basically, just entirely risking off. But sadly, I don't think it's too likely. I think Bitcoin having broken out, you should expect it to go higher, or this be a false breakout, and for it to just kind of wipe all the leverage before it either tries again or goes lower. I think the least likely would be us actually just consolidating here.
I mean, I think it would change the calculus, or at least like how one would assess the impact of going back below 104 if we get like something resembling alt season in the meantime.
Yeah.
Like, for example, if BTC in the short term with ETH where it is, etc., breaks down below 104, you could still make reasonable arguments that, like, you know, essentially what was said earlier. Yeah, it's shit in the short term. Take this weekly thing seriously. But it could just be a flush. And if it goes back above 104K, that's worth punting. But, like, if we just go batshit bananas with BTC above 104K, and then having added all that leverage, open interest, froth speculation, it breaks below, I think my targets overall would be lower.
Much lower, yeah.
So that's an interesting one.
Fully agreed.
But yeah, that's ETH, basically. As always, just look at BTC and come to a conclusion.
Yeah, I mean, but you look at ETH BTC, that's not that bad. Like, it's obviously fucking terrible, but the on the weekly time frame, we talked about this last week, I'm pretty sure. The cluster that it needs to hold is holding right now.
That one green candle, right?
That one green candle is doing all the work. And I like that. Like, I like it. I think generally the case for ETH gets much weaker if that cluster doesn't hold.
Okay.
Just because you want to see a little bit of outperformance. So the fact that it's holding, and like, you go to the left and see how long it's been since one of these has actually just offered any support.
Yeah.
You will not find anything.
You just won't find support.
Yeah, you won't find any of these that has actually flipped, right? They've all been resistance.
Yeah.
If you go to the left, like, literally every single one of these has actually just been resistance since the inception of time. And this is a nice change of pace. So that'd been good to hold. It'd be especially good to hold if Bitcoin runs. That'd be quite impressive, I think. But this is what I'm looking for an ETH BTC, to see if that holds or not.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty relevant for sure. It's also very nice on the daily time frame.
Yeah, the further you zoom in, like, the better it looks. Like,
I'm on the 1 minute, and
like, you go to the 1 hour, you're like, how has anyone ever been bearish this thing? Like, this has only gone up.
yeah. Look at that breakout. Wow.
Yeah.
Time frames, man. No, I think that makes a lot of sense. If it can keep up with an all-time high acceleration, that'd be super impressive. And if it can run without the all-time high breakout, that'd be super locally impressive. Like, oh my god, look, like, BTC is consolidating, finally people are piling risk into alts. But as long as it doesn't subsequently lead to a 104K breakdown,
that'd be better. Yeah.
I mean, my view tentatively at the moment is if we get super altcoin strength with BTC not leading, and while it's still hovering, the probability of BTC catching up is lower than the probability of just the market nuking, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
so
I generally think altcoins going up significantly would kind of be the end of this run.
Yeah, that wouldn't be great.
I
mean, it would be great locally, because, like, holy shit, finally. I just mean, you never want to be in a position where the health of the market is determined by BTC catching up to a bunch of dog shit. Like, that's a really bad spot to be in, because more often than not, it'll just not. It's always easier to make those, I mean, at least historically it's been easier to make those arguments if BTC is leading, and then the altcoin trade is on the catch up, not the other way around. Like, the first version is like historical alt season type of ingredients. The second version is basically 2021 top, where BTC is stopped. It's a final, hurrah from everything else, and then you pay for it, basically, as soon as BTC even flinches. That said, a bunch of shit's been different on the altcoin side this cycle around. I had a tweet about it, talking about, I mean, things we've covered on this show, like the native pool of buyers used to be ones that would, like, roll their profits into other things, and so there'd be like a wealth effect, velocity of money, etc., from BTC going up. But now it's just like leveraged BTC gambling companies and ETFs, some directional, some just farming the basis trade, and then that there's no trickle down economics, or at least the tap is much weaker than it was in the past. So we'll see. I mean, look, the entire show is basically BTC. You need to get going, or just hold 104k. Anything below 104k, we become unreasonably panicked and start talking about weekly fractals if you're German.
Yeah.
Altcoins, hyperliquid.
Yeah.
You obviously longed it after I shilled it last week, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, I shilled this while you were gone. While you
perfect.
disappeared at like $12.
Yeah.
It's at 34 now. Yeah. I mean, that was also a reclaim. Like I was like the $12 reclaim. That's what I talked about on the show. Basically,
nice.
The moment we closed above it, it's like this is a nice reclaim. It's a good chart. And it's still rallying. Has a good narrative. I don't really see like a good reason to be bearish this thing. Other than the fact that a bunch of people that are holding this are miserable people, but that doesn't really have an impact on whether you should hold something or not. No, it just looks decent. I don't really see a good reason to be bearish. You can make an argument that below $32, maybe you get like a temporary pullback, but as long as $32 holds, that's a good chart.
Yeah, and it's like a very clear winner in its category,
Yeah.
And that whole wealth effect mechanism, they basically hit it out the park. 10 out of 10. Make your native holders rich, make it a good trading experience, and voila, off you go. No dodgy like foundation siphoning the actual money and people begging for a fee switch or anything, just like straight up, we're just going to buy the token and we're going to give you a bunch of tokens, and those two things together, number go up type of deal. The only medium to long-term risk I think is less likely to be endogenous, like within the decentralized derivatives whatever space. I think it's more likely to be exogenous, like if perps get fully legalized in the US type of thing, and it's like at least the regulatory arbitrage no KYC angle becomes a bit deflated, but like whatever, that's like peering way into the future. At the moment, this is just like a very clear both like local category leader as far as DEX, decentralized derivatives, perp DEX, whatever, but also just like within crypto, it's a shining star for good reason. So I think that's worth a lot, especially with the amount of garbage we have this time around. It's fucking unbelievable. So projects that are actually good and are building and have aligned mechanisms and rewards stand out like a sore thumb, more so than usual. Hyperliquid. No, I agree. Like, I mean, what are you going to do levels wise? It's like $32. Like, if you're sidelined waiting for a dip, you're either paying for momentum with a 32 invalidation, or you're hoping BTC pulls back and this thing gets dragged down unreasonably just by correlation.
But you had that already.
You already had that. Yeah. I mean, that was the entire move down, basically. So yeah, those are usually the options you're dealt with. I mean, look, for me at least, that's always been the playbook. If I'm sidelined on an altcoin that I really want some exposure to, I either just like clench my teeth and pay the premium for it, looking for like a nearby low to medium time frame invalidation. It's like a stupidity tax. Like you missed this, so fucking pay up. And I think it's not a bad framework. Yeah, if the trend is strong enough, there's enough momentum, narrative wise, whatever. Sometimes you just have to pay up to get the exposure that you want and pay for the sins of not being smart enough earlier. But your other option is to, look at BTC and make an assessment of how likely is it to pull back and how likely is the thing that you want to buy to be correlated and react to that downside move. I think the second part is like almost always like it just happens. It might not be as deep as you like. Like if BTC pulls back 2%, if you place your bids like 10% lower, you might not get it. But just in general, like correlations dragging things down a little bit and giving you some semblance of an entry. Instead of buying the green candle, you can actually buy a red one. Relying on BTC to force that pullback this kind of works as an entry technique. And I think it works for both ends of the trade, generally speaking. Like you look for an entry when BTC is weak, and then you kind of and you actually like execute when you think BTC is bottomed, realistically.
Yeah.
the difficult part is obviously a question of scale. Like if you get the calculation wrong, as mentioned earlier, where BTC is pulling back, I think it's going to pull back to this level, and therefore this coin will go roughly to this level. You can get that very wrong if it's much stronger than you think or much weaker than you think. If they're like generally correlated direction wise, doesn't mean they're correlated 1-to-1 in terms of magnitude. Like BTC is going to pull back 5, therefore this pulls back 10 or 1 to whatever ratio you have is likely to be wrong. So that's really the tricky part. But I think in terms of just thinking about an entry to stuff you want to own, if you want to use BTC to do it, you kind of just hope that there's some correlation between red candles on BTC and red candles on this thing, and then you just don't get too greedy, I think, at that point. I've been victim of this behavior, I'm sure you have as well, where you want to get some exposure to an altcoin, BTC starts pulling back, and then the bids are just too fucking far, and whether that's a product of the relative strength being way more impressive than you think, or BTC sort of bottoming out earlier, you kind of just still feel like an idiot if you miss it. Because now the pullback's there, but you were too greedy either on the BTC front or in terms of how much you thought that would spill over to the altcoin. So I think you need to be almost a bit more entry insensitive if you're taking those kind of correlation pullback trades, because the underlying goal is to get a piece of this. You're already being offered a gift in the form of a pullback, trying to fucking ICT snipe the whole thing. Is why you're in that position in the first place, probably.
Yeah, generally, I'm always confused because most people actually like stuff or dislike stuff, right? Like yes. I look at this stuff and I'm like, whatever, I don't care if it goes up, it goes up. But like most people in the market, they have like an opinion about like whether something is good or not, and they want to own it, and then they're like, oh, I want the optimal entry, and I'm like, that's what I'm supposed to be doing, right? Like I'm the person that doesn't really give a shit. And if I missed the trade, I could not care less, right? But if you're actually a person that likes something, just buy the damn thing. Like, what's the problem? Like, maybe buy less, right? Like, buy a little bit, and then you can still, like, if it giga dips, you can just buy more. But like, I never really get that whole argument where people really like a coin or like a project, and they really want to own it, but then they have to have the Pico low. I think that's a really bad frame of mind, because basically it's gonna make you clip the top, because you're never gonna get the entry that you actually want, and then you're gonna sit on the sidelines waiting for it still, because you're like, I could have bought this cheaper, and then at some point you capitulate because you like it so much, and then it's actually just the top. I think it's a bad way to look at it. You're either completely insensitive to it and you really don't give a shit, and then you can just only take the perfect entries and then just leave it alone if you don't get that, which I would categorize myself as in that category. I really don't care. If I miss a trade, for me, there's always another one. Or you actually like something and you actually think something is gonna go up, and then you just buy a little bit if you're a little bit risk averse, and buy more if it goes slower, or buy more if it confirms higher. But I generally think just owning something that you like should be self-explanatory, right? Like you like the thing, you buy the thing. It's pretty easy.
Yeah, I think honestly, that's been historically one of my biggest pitfalls, and the one I've been slowest to learn from. It's being able to code switch between trader brain and I want some exposure to this thing brain. And it's really difficult, especially if you're like conditioned on the trader side. You end up in this like paradoxical position where you really want exposure to something, so you should just buy it, as you said, but then your trader brain just like won't let you, and you're there waiting for a setup. So you think this thing is going to go up for like weeks and months, and you're there in the 5 minute trying to fucking snipe it and get a precise entry at like one price, versus just scaling in. And I think that's happened to a ton of people. I used to fuck this up. I mean, I still do periodically, but certainly in the past, I've fucked this up all the time with like even high time frame BTC swing trade ideas, where I was like, oh, I think this is going to like double to the other side of the range or something, right? Or like, oh, there's like big high time frame moves. And so the expected move is say 100% or 50%, but then my entry has to be within like a 1% margin of error of precision. Otherwise there's no entry at all, which is absurd, right? Because if you were to frame it differently and say, do you think it's wise to miss out on a 50% move for a 1% better entry? Any sane and reasonable person would say no. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. But that's exactly what you end up doing, or I ended up doing, when you start trading around your kind of high conviction investments. and it's difficult, but I think the best and maybe only way to get around it is just to have two modes. One is like the autistic schizo crypto Twitter trader mode, where you're like, oh, there is a distortion created by a price insensitive buyer or seller that has massively repriced the fair value of this thing, and I will now action on this distortion in accordance with my predetermined trading principles. You know, and you just
why did you sound all German all of a sudden?
And like, you know, you turn on that guy and he does the trading for you. But I think guy number 2 is like the polar opposite of him. He's like the super chill, like, oh yeah, I think this thing's gonna go up. I'm pretty bullish. I'll buy some, I'll scale in, I'll do whatever. I just want a piece of it in my portfolio for peace of mind. And I think having those two archetypes that you can switch between, as long as you do it judiciously, and you let that kind of live through the entire lifespan of the trade, I think that's way better than mixing and matching, or like diddling in the middle, where you really want exposure but you're like half trading around it, or you start trading around it and then you become an investor and kind of loosen up your risk parameters, like, oh no, don't worry, I'm working an area, meanwhile you're like 1% away from liquidation. I feel like that's just where a lot of traders in terms of the lifetime P&L go to die, where either they don't have those clearly defined archetypes of, I'm either really trading this thing really carefully, or I want exposure to this sector industry and I want to go up. Like, a lot of the stuff in between is super messy, and if you fall there, then you end up with the worst of both worlds. Your entries when you're trading and trade management end up being sloppy with round trips, and then your investments, you essentially miss out on a bunch of shit or mismanage them because you turn on your trader brain at the wrong time. So the middle there sucks, but also mechanistically, like, switching between those two is also fucking annoying and terrible. Like turning from trader to investor during the life course of the trade, or from investor to trader during the life course of the trade, that tends to not work super well. Like, if I could go back in time, that'd probably be one of the main things I would tell my past self. Like, listen, have clear guidelines for when you're doing this, like, schizo trading stuff, versus when you just have like ideas and kind of investments and want exposures to a sector, and don't let those two guys meet each other, basically.
Yeah, well said.
Have you had experience with that? Do you manage that? Have you felt that tension before? Have you fucked up trades from being on one side or the other side, or in the middle?
Yeah, I have. I mean, my ETH trade is a good example, good recent example. I mean, I took an ETH trade. I was like, I think this is gonna go up, and then it went up, and I was like, I actually like this. I'll just keep it, and I got invalidation for my trades, like a bunch of invalidations, and I was like, I just whatever. It's like it's an investment sort of thing now, and then it nuked and nuked and nuked. Now it's down 50%. So, I mean, now it's back to break even ish.
Yeah, that makes it okay. No mistakes were made.
But like from a trade perspective, and this was supposed to be a trade at first, that was terrible, right? Like you don't want to sit through 50% drawdown. In the end, it's fine for me, but like that kind of like, yeah, you got to be careful when you're turning stuff into something that it's not. And if you flip flop on it afterwards too, like imagine I sold because at some point I'm like, shit, this is like this was dumb. This was a dumb idea, and then I sold it because I went back from investor to the trader side of things. That's the worst of all the worlds, right? So you gotta stick with kind of like what you want to do from the get-go. That's the best case scenario, but flip-flopping between the two is the worst case scenario.
Yeah,
like that's the worst thing you can do, and that's actually something I see a lot of people doing.
100%.
The trade goes wrong and they start being investors and then it goes horribly wrong, and then they turn back into traders being like, I can, like, if I sell now, I think it's going to go down 20% more, and then I can buy even more, and it's going to be a good trade.
Yeah.
And then you sell the bottom, this thing rallies, and like the flip-flopping is the worst, but generally should just avoid having that altogether.
For sure. I mean, the issue is like the flip-flopping fucks you no matter whether the trade starts to go poorly, as you described, or even when it goes well, it can screw you over, right?
Yep.
Like you can imagine you take an investment and it starts going well, and then you turn on your trader brain and you see like a 1 hour level of resistance with a 0.5% pullback. You're like, oh, okay, I'm gonna sell this, and then I'll just like rebuy the confirmation, or I'll add back in on a higher low or something. You just end up trading yourself out of a fundamentally good position. And then if you were to look on the weekly chart, like nothing is visible, nothing changed whatsoever. But because you went trader mode on an investment that was going well, you end up chopping yourself out of the position. And it works the other way around too. Like you enter something as trader mode, it works in your favor maybe pretty quickly, and you're like, hey, you know what? I'm actually really smart. This is a fantastic trade. It's a fantastic idea. Fuck my targets. Fuck my resistance levels. I'm just gonna hold this thing and let it run. And then what ends up happening is that the trader version of you was right, and you end up round tripping the position because you afforded it more. You gave it more room or whatever than you should have. So that's the thing about flip flopping. If you're wrong, it screws you over additionally. If you're right, it can also screw you over additionally. There's almost no tangible, intelligible benefit to flip flopping like that, aside from like at the extremely advanced, nuanced levels where you can make that assessment on the fly in terms of, oh, I actually miscalculate, I'm much more right about this than I thought, and I'm gonna adjust. But like that's really hard, and I still think most of the time it's not the starting point by any means. Like that's something I still stuck at, and been trading for 8 years or whatever. I'd be better off if I just stuck to those two archetypes instead of thinking I'm smart enough to flip flop or whatever.
Yeah, the moment you start thinking you're too smart to yeah, you're fucked.
Yeah, especially with us, dude. Like,
yeah,
good luck finding dumber people. But yeah, that I think is super useful, and maybe it resonates with someone, maybe it doesn't. But having that clear separation is really, really valuable and important. And there are ways to kind of hack about it, right? Like you could have a completely separate investment account on an exchange, and it has its own rules, guidelines, rebalancing quotas, whatever. And you just kind of don't look at it, or only look at it through the lens that you've described in advance. And then you have a trading account where you do all the dumb shit, but what you're trying to avoid is contagion between the two. And I think in many cases, because people will use like 1 or 2 venues and they do all their activity on them, that makes it so much easier to fuck it up. Like if it's somewhere else on another account, segregated away, you don't have the leverage on, you don't have all the other positions running, I think you increase your odds for success because there's sort of a process attached to the two different approaches, and there's some real separation. Whereas if you're just punting it all in one place on one account, that makes it really easy to spill over from trader to investor and vice versa. So I think in terms of stuff that I really truly believe is actually useful, would be coming up with a framework for like, what does it mean to be an investor in this space? And like, how do I approach asset selection, rebalancing, frequency, position sizing, risk management? You kind of go through the normal sort of trading system approach, and you set that up on another account or another exchange, and you just run that process autonomously there. And then you do the same for trading, where you're much more particular and precise with it as far as how you define your edge, how you trade, your holding periods, etc. And in a similar vein, you do that somewhere else, and you keep the two separate. And then you should be able to, at any time you want to put on or take off and it will do anything in the market, you should be able to very clearly consult one of these things and know exactly which one is appropriate and which one you're doing. And if you find yourself being like, oh, it's a bit of this and a bit of that, you should probably skip it or just make a choice as to whether to treat it as a trade or as an investment. I've fucked this up so many times and still do to this day because it's so tempting. I feel like experience here can actually hamper you a little bit as well. Because you're like, oh,
like I'm good enough.
Yeah, I'm good enough. I can trade, I can trade around my investments or whatever. But you can, but you can't. Or you shouldn't think that you can, even if you can. Anyway, that was, I know it's a very long ranty section, but genuinely think it's one of the more useful pieces of advice in the space, especially after 8 years. Altcoins. Hot air has been rising, Don.
I mean, unsurprisingly. One that I also I've been shilling stuff. I've not been buying stuff, but I've been shilling stuff really well.
Amazing. It's what we specialize in.
Yeah. I mean, Fartcoin, like on this show at 0.35 is where I shilled this thing. So I mean, I'm
just checking our WhatsApp for messages from you to buy it 0.35, and
yeah,
maybe the search
yeah.
is broken. I don't know what's going on
I don't
exactly.
know if I want to put it on record that like Fartcoin, like in writing, that Fartcoin at $0.35 is a good buy. Like I don't want to put that in writing, but
It was.
it was. Yeah. No, I generally think it's one of, if not the best memes that we have this cycle. So if memes are gonna be around, it's gonna do well. And the fact that we're almost back at all-time high
It's
just
crazy.
validates it more. Like this is fucking crazy.
And how
Like
it got
most,
here as well. That's a trend and a half, you know?
yeah, that's lockout trend on Fartcoin. It's hilarious. But I mean, it's just generally funny in a
Yes.
way. Like we went from having somewhat funny memes to just like you could tell that everyone was just trying really hard to make something funny that wasn't. And Fartcoin is quite funny again. It's a little bit return to tradition. I'm not hating. I've there's a lot of memes I find really fucking stupid. This is one of the ones where I'm like, at least it's funny. Generally think even though it's Fartcoin, this is also gonna go to zero, but it's gonna go to zero much slower than a lot of the other ones, and it's probably gonna go up before then.
I mean, it's an outlier in its category,
Yeah,
for sure. But also, that retest was very rough. Like on the daily, it actually hasn't made it super easy to get entries unless you've been holding. Like it was
yeah.
very clean TA wise for a while, but then these pullbacks have just been massively undercutting and wicking through the retest levels. So that's been. I mean, even on the 4 hour, if you look at those consolidations, those are not easy. You know,
No,
it just kind of grinds you out, and then you blink, and it's higher than it was. So there's a bit of a change there, but yeah, like on the weekly, I mean, this is like a really good example. Like, imagine if you were the spot guy who was like, yeah, Fartcoin, funny meme, and there's some technical basis to my idea that, you know, the 35-cent cluster is good. I'm just going to allocate some to this because I want meme exposure, and then I'll watch it, right? Like on the weekly time frame, sure, there are some wicks, but how many times after that did you really kind of shit yourself? No pun intended. Like, not at all, right? Like every single candle is green since that point. But then you look on the daily or the 4 hour, and I can find 10 places that would have made it difficult from a trading perspective to like hold that long, especially if you didn't have that investment, you know, mandate, if you will, attached to it. Like I think the weekly and the every single lower time frame are just like worlds apart for this chart. And those red candles undercutting the range, grindy periods. If you're looking at all of them through a 1 4 hour daily lens, they're tough. If you looked at the chart every single week, you wouldn't flinch, you know. But yeah, I don't know. This from a in the past, I kind of mentioned that this was kind of baby pips style, breakout, retest, whatever. I think that's changed a little bit. It got harder in terms of right now, especially because it's one of those charts where the breakouts tend, recently at least, the last couple, they don't cleanly retest the breakout level itself. They actually make their way more towards like the mid-range or the range low and undercut it sometimes before continuation. So I don't think there's like a simple blueprint that can be applied to this, like in a super baby pip style. Like, you know, a lot of 2021 coins literally did that, right? Like every single breakout just like never looked back and kept going. You never got a pullback, but at least you never got back below the breakout level. That's changed a little bit here. It's still probably a decent roadmap just to say, hey, is the prior consolidation holding? I think that's still appropriate. But honestly, with these types of trends, if you get an entry and everything else aligns, it's not one that I'd want to manage intraday or even day to day because it'll probably erode your mental health quite a bit.
yeah, I agree.
What's your Fartcoin entry for me? Since you're so good at shilling,
I mean, I'm really bad at buying these kind of things when they're already up
35
this much.
cents.
Like 35 cents was the one that I shilled. Now it's at one point what, like 1.5.
Five, yeah.
Like there's no support resistance line that I like. This is the thing with these coins. You usually get like one good entry, and
Yeah.
then either you just buy that entry or you just close your eyes, buy it, and hope. And I think we're kind of in the second phase. If you want to own it, you're gonna have to probably. I mean, there's no really good entry here, right? Like chart level wise. And it's really scary. Like if this thing also went up for the last 7 weeks, right?
Yes.
And maybe you can talk about TA wise that there's like support at 0.7, but if it goes to 0.7, is this actually gonna go back up? Like if it pulls back 50% from here, really hard to say.
Yeah.
So I just don't have anything good to say. 0.35 was nice. If that's like if whoever is listening to this took a trade there, I still like it, and you can just follow the trend, right? I think a close below like $1 would be bad news, and like 0.9 maybe, like that's bad
It's fine.
news at that point.
Just tell me I'm too late. It's okay. Don't need to sugarcoat it.
Yeah,
Too
at that
late for a
point.
TA entry.
Yeah, no, but at 0.9, basically at that point, I think it started looking quite dicey for the people in the trade, and otherwise, I don't know. It's hard to say.
Hot air, bro.
Yeah.
No, I think that's more than fair. Any other altcoin? I mean, you talked about Solana a little bit. That's
Hmm.
kind of in the same place
Yeah,
as
same.
last week.
It
Similar
looks
to
better
ETH
now. Looks better now than it did last week, even.
on account of
On account of just having consolidated very
okay.
constructively. Like last week, we were trading at the same price, I think, 246. Yeah, a little bit lower. Like we're
Yeah.
pulling back last week. Um, but like, look at that consolidation. Like that's clean. Like I generally like when you get these kind of move ups, and they're really strong, and you just retrace a little bit of it. Like that's a strong
The
looking
shallow
chart.
pullback. Yeah.
Yeah, shallow pullback is usually a good thing. I if you go to the weekly time frame, we finally hit that resistance that I had on there. Like I had a cluster, the 6th of January 2025 cluster.
Mm-hmm.
That was my resistance. We hit that ish this week. So like there is a little bit of resistance here, but generally same as ETH really. Like you have a strong move up and you go a little bit of sideways, and the candle bodies start disappearing. I'm totally fine with that.
Yeah.
Like it just looks decent, even in the face of resistance. It's the same. Like it's 1-to-1 the same as ETH, I would
Yes.
say. Um, I like the potential that the ETH chart has better, but it's also the fact that Solana's just been much stronger. So you can pick whatever you want, like either like the potential that the chart has on ETH or the strength that Solana has been showing since 2023.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can make your choice there. I like the charts on both of them. Solana starts looking really bad below 126. That is quite a bit away, but I think that's the best kind of
The
invalidation
level
that
that we
there
fudded
is.
every single time, right? That one.
Yeah, we flooded the level until it broke, and then it became our invalidation. So
Yeah. Study that.
yeah,
No, I think it's nice. 126 reclaim is definitely a big deal, and it's hard to find it. The USD pair here, on from a levels and chart perspective, has been historically like a bit mangled. I think it hasn't been that great. I mean, the monthly has been okay because that's where you got your bottom essentially. It's on monthly support.
yeah,
So that was a cook. But like, what else? It's almost greedy to expect all other time frames to have levels that good as well.
yeah. And I mean, it is running into monthly resistance as well, right? Like there is resistance there clearly. Like if you go on the monthly time frame, the green candle before the breakdown, like that's basically
Yeah,
exactly
the
where we
same
got rejected.
188 area. Yeah.
Yeah, 189, 100 something. Yeah. So like there is resistance there, but it's a very bullish chart generally. Like if you put on the monthly, you're like, holy shit, this is so bullish. Like I don't think you can make an argument that that chart is not hilariously
Like
bullish on the
nothing's ever
monthly.
broken. Every
Yeah.
single pullback eaten up immediately, so close to all-time high, and then you get the
I mean, it
fundamental
looks
pieces.
exactly the same as it did in 2023.
Right.
Like you just have you have an up move, you have complete sideways, and then you get another up move. Now I don't think Solana is gonna do the same up move it did back then, like from 20 to 200. I don't think it's gonna 10x from here. I think that's asking for a little bit much, but just generally, chart wise, there's no big difference. And you have like a decent invalidation here too, like a close below 126 on the monthly time frame, and I think you probably would want to take some profit. Like if you're a long-term Solana holder, I think that'd be a decent invalidation for making sure that you keep some of the gains, because stuff in crypto goes up and goes down. So you always have to have some sort of fail safe, but that's a pretty decent one.
Yeah. No disagreement there. Yeah, 188 is quite good on all time frames, to be honest.
Yeah.
So like if you're high time frame at least, it's what 126, 188, big picture, and then 190 plus. We can have an acceleration gate type conversation if it's relevant.
Yeah.
But also like most people who are really bullish on Solana are speculating on stuff within Solana. More so at this point, it feels like more so than the native token itself. Mostly to their detriment, I would imagine, but it's still
Yes.
the way the cookie crumbles. Those are the main alts that I've been looking at. A lot of them are just in very similar spots to last week, at least like the big liquid ones. I mean, Doge is another example, right? Like it hits a cluster, candle bodies disappear on the weekly. Fartcoin is trending. Aave has been super strong.
Yeah.
That's making its way through the cluster, which is nice. Sui, we also talked about. It's just kind of similar to last week. Last little grindy bit close to the all-time high. I think there's like some lower high risk there. So it's not as sexy in terms of space or whatever. But looks better than most altcoin charts. You know, that's a pullback from a
Yeah,
pretty
but
good spot.
didn't Sui just lose the entire chain?
It's fine.
Like,
This is crypto. It's okay.
No, but like straight up, there was something like that.
Yeah,
no?
I think like the decks there either
Like
got
the
hacked
major
or had
major
an issue.
decks got hacked, and
Yeah.
everything.
But
went
then
to
all the
zero.
validators were like, "Yo, let's not do that." And so,
Dude, I do not understand, man. How can you have that and the chart doesn't move? I don't understand.
because it's so bullish, figure it out.
Yeah.
And then XRP is still climbing along in the consolidation. Nothing.
I mean, XRP USD weekly. That's just. I mean, that's the chart. It's basically. Honestly, everything looks a little bit the same.
Yeah, agreed.
And then you just buy whatever you like best, or don't buy. Don't buy something, and then if it nukes, tell me that I'm the reason you lost money.
So true. It's my plan.
But just generally, like everything looks like basically everything went up, like everything decent at least went up and to the right, like just. And now it's like straight up to the right, like it's just a consolidation on the weekly time frame on pretty much every single thing out there. Bitcoin obviously is stronger than the rest because that's been up and up, so that's not like up and to the right, it's only up. That's a little bit better. But even on the altcoins, on the USD pairs, like they just look quite good. Like XRP, to me, I zoom out, I'm like, holy shit, that looks good. I look at Solana, I'm like, that looks quite decent. Not as good as XRP does to me, but still really, really good. With ETH, I look at it and I'm like, doesn't really look great, but it has a lot of potential. So it still looks kind of okay. And then, I mean, you can just go through the list, right? Like Fartcoin, that looks really good. You have a bunch of meme coins that bounced a bunch. I'd be a little bit careful with those. Like with Popcat, like those went up like 3x, 4x. I think there's a chance that they run back, but there's also a chance that this is just a complacency shoulder and that they're gonna go back to dumping afterwards. I'm not quite entirely sure on that yet. I generally think a lot of people bag held these and are gonna be happy to rotate out of them if it goes up a little bit higher. But I could be wrong, and it's just meme season again. I don't want to make a strong call on that, but that's just kind of my gut feeling. Like you get a 3x on something that basically went to 0 or 4x. You're gonna see a lot of people kind of looking for an exit and to rotate it into something actually interesting. But I could be wrong. I don't want to. It's not a strong call. It's just more of like a gut feeling. And I mean, it's all been memes the entire cycle so far. So maybe it stays memes and they just keep running.
But then, Hyperliquid, it stands out.
This one where you're holding, like it's some sort of meme, but also fundamentally kind of sound.
Yeah.
And you combine both and you're not at risk of just basically having something that's just going to go down 99%, which is nice, right? You have the same upside potential without the rug risk, basically. And I think those kind of things you want to be looking for. There's not many in crypto like that.
It's super rare, especially if you consider just how many coins there are. The classic talking point, but it's real. The final bit is the S&P 500. Trump had some things to say.
Oh yeah, I mean it's the reason why we're not giga pushing right now.
I feels like he just kind of woke up grumpy and
Yeah.
just said things about Apple in Europe. The S&P is
Yeah, I
interesting
mean,
because,
do
sorry,
you
go on.
know I think basically Europe announced like a minerals deal with Greenland, and then like a day after he went off on Europe. So I don't know if
Legend.
that is kind of correlated, but that's what he wanted, right? Like he said he would want a minerals deal, or like generally just Greenland. And
Just
now Europe,
Greenland.
now Europe is kind of like going in on that. And he's not a big fan, apparently. Yeah,
Less
that's
market impact though. So,
people calling his bluff, basically. I
yes.
think basically what we've been seeing, right? And I think no matter how much or how little you like Trump, like he talks quite big, but if it actually has quite a big impact on the markets or on anything, he kind of like rows it back. China thing, the China tariffs, they're in place, and then suddenly like they're delayed for 90 days, and then again for 90 days, and kind of like get pushed along. A lot of the other tariffs, same deal. They kind of like get introduced and they get taken off, and I think people are just like they're basically not trusting him on what he's saying anymore, and therefore the market impact is quite limited, because this is a big deal, right? Like you put tariffs on everyone. That's a big deal. That's going to have real consequences. But I think um, the markets at least are pricing that he will not have the balls to go through with it.
Yeah.
And it could very well be a complete and utter like just wrong, right?
Like a
And
miscalculation.
yeah, a miscalculation. And if it's a miscalculation, so you're gonna see a massive, massive nuke on the markets. I think we're basically we're gambling the market's life on the fact that Trump is not going to have the balls to pull through.
I mean, the
And
market's calling his bluff essentially.
yeah, but
Yeah.
if it's not a bluff, if it's actually just straight up like what he's gonna do,
Yeah.
the markets are gonna lose big time, and I think that's gonna be a big, big nuke. But then the big nuke would basically compel, like from all the evidence that we've seen, would compel Trump to kind of like go back on it again. We're in this dumb situation where the worse the market gets, the more fundamentally bullish it's gonna be, because the tariffs are gonna be rolled back,
Yeah.
which is really fucking stupid. Like we're in a very odd spot now. Not so easy to trade on the traditional market side, I think.
No, for sure. I think it's a very good framework. Like, especially if he keeps spamming tariff stuff and not following through, that just gets discounted each time. The more he does it, until he actually follows through. In which case, all the built-up discounting it bets are wrong at the same
Yeah,
time, and that would be ugly. From a TA perspective, I think it's a pretty interesting spot as the meme goes, because we sort of talked about what is the risk of a lower high this close. We said it was pretty low. Obviously, the market's pulled back since then, and one of the things we talked about was it can pull back as long as it holds like the reclaim shelf, which is what, like 5.6, 5.7 ish, roughly, from like a super high time frame point of view. And I think there's some like moving average memes around there as well. And it would essentially be like breakdown, like the point of breakdown, reclaim, retested. I think that's fine. That's okay from a purely chart perspective.
yeah,
Anything else would start getting a bit shitty, I think.
yeah,
Because the whole thing is like, oh, it's a bluff. We're so back. And then the bears get run over. Even if they get a bit of redemption on a minor pullback, it can't be just like a structure shifting pullback. Because then it sort of looks like a really extended lower high, or at least like the momentum has run out on the bluff calling leg of the move. So I think eyeballing this thing 5.6, 5.7, wherever that form of floor is for you, that's probably pretty important to hold, generally speaking.
yeah,
Especially because like we saw the impact on BTC when the tariff news came out. It was something we discussed earlier that like if it gets volatile enough to the downside, it's very likely to spill over to crypto. Still, I'd love for that relationship to be less pronounced, obviously. But at the moment, at least from the available evidence, if we get big S&P nukes, we kind of eat that up as well. I mean, we've benefited from the upside as well, no doubt about it, in my mind at least,
yeah.
with the walk back. But I think the correlated coin has two sides to it. So you essentially end up in a world where BTC is at an inflection point, because if the weekly breakout fails at some stage, that gets dicey. And then so is the S&P, because it's at a big retest level and we're still in tariff game theory world. So deal with that what you may. And by what you may, I mean just bag hold 50% and then break even on it. Because
I mean, that's kind of Chad. Who did that again?
Yeah, I know, right? So good. That was one of the news articles, by the way. Analyst downplays Trump's tariff threat on EU goods. It's like literally calling the bluff. Apple devices, as Bitcoin briefly slips under 109K. Still an unreal headline. As someone who traded BTC at around 3K several times, seeing slips under 109,000 is jarring. I don't want to think about it, you know? The other news pieces are things we've sort of talked about in passing in most of them. One of them is the Trump dinner. So Lamar Odom, Justin Sun party at Trump's meme coin gala as lawmakers blast selling access. We sort of touched on this before. I think a good test would be that if someone on the other side of the political aisle that you don't agree with would do this, what would your reasonable reaction be, or your likely reaction be? As long as you're a person with a shred of like logical consistency and an intellectual integrity or whatever.
It's very rare nowadays.
I know, yeah, that's true. But I just don't like vectors of access to the head of state like this. I don't think it's bad for democracy in general. I don't think a sitting head of state, whatever party they're from, should have these types of in-your-face financial interests. And then it starts to turn into like Banana Republic territory. When it's like, oh, but their son, the head of state's children have these like adjacent business interests and empires, and it's like a link to the head of state himself. Like, this is Banana Republic type of structure, and I don't like it. I don't like that Trump's doing it. If the Democrats are in power and they were selling access in a similar way and using crypto to do it, I'd also speak against that. I don't think it's a great look. And also, like, it's very easy to make Democrats hate crypto, as they do already, right? Like, we know most of them have like an inherent dislike to crypto. But then this kind of stuff just compounds it. And you can imagine when they get into power, I don't think it's going to be Republicans until the end of time. This will just kind of embolden them to hate crypto even more.
For good reason too,
yeah,
right?
for good reason. It's like, well, no, I never really liked this tech because I thought it was scam, theft, fraud, corruption. And then, by the way, when the last president was in office, that's kind of, it was in your face that all of those use cases are enforced. So we're gonna regulate it more tightly and nuke it and sell the BTC strategic reserve that the US has, so on and so forth. It's like, I just don't like the precedent that it sets, and I don't like that it emboldens the other side when the pendulum of power swings eventually. I think it's like a long-term losing game all around. Yeah. And also, whenever Trump does crypto stuff, the price goes down.
Straight up.
Like
straight
recently
up.
or whatever.
It's extractive. Like this kind of stuff is extractive. Did you see like the Chamath video where he's like, it's really shit. Like the Democrats are really shit because you could never, like, even as the biggest donor of the party, you could never get like face to face with any of them. I was donating like millions and millions
and wasn't getting access.
I wasn't getting access. And if you compare this to like what is happening now with like these like crypto dinners and whatever, and I see a lot of people on Twitter being like, yeah, this might be a little bit corrupt, but the Democrats were doing it too. Apparently not to this extent, right? Like, I think that's kind of fair to say. Like, just listening to someone that's been trying to buy access and didn't manage to by donating to the Democrats and now is on the other side and has all the access in the world, I think that's kind of problematic behavior. Obviously, like these kind of bribes and like that kind of shitty behavior exists on all sides. Like, it's not only an American thing either, right? We have this in the European Union too. You have this in the UK, right? Like, there's a bunch of this stuff, but there's obviously levels to it. And I think these kind of crypto dinners and like Justin Sun getting like a pardon for like all his actions after having donated a bunch, I think that's just generally very in your face, just corruption. And I think it's problematic. And the more it gets normalized, the more you're going to get even more corrupt officials in place, right? And we've seen this in Europe, in the countries to the east, like where that leads to. And it's not a good society, I can promise you that. So like I'd be careful on that front. Like the more brazen this gets, the worse it does. Like the worse it gets, like it compounds basically. And like an erosion of morals like this, especially like when it's just publicly accepted, is just a bad thing generally.
Yeah. And as crypto people, we suffer if that's the primary mechanism of getting access.
Just generally, like even if you take all the societal impacts out of it, it's just generally bad for us. Like I don't know why the crypto people are celebrating this. You don't want to embolden people like Justin Sun to do all the crime that he wants to, and then get a pardon.
Allegedly in Minecraft.
Like allegedly, yeah. I mean, he is not a criminal.
Definitely not, and we're not aware of any illegal criminal activities.
Yeah, like, but this is like a problem, and obviously, like, this is extractive behavior. The people that are actually paying for this stuff are the holders, right?
I mean, Trump killed the trenches, like the coin. Trump and Melania, the 1-2 combo, jab cross, good night type of thing. And everything since then has been a fart in comparison to what it was. So yeah, I don't like the structure of it. Yeah. And thing is, like, the main crypto win was a legislative one. Like we donate, the crypto parties and companies donated a bunch of money to sort of pro crypto candidates, and they won. Like that's your lever there. And there's a crypto czar or whatever. Like you kind of won. Like big changes at the SEC, they've dropped everything. Like the stuff that actually matters was basically decided around the time of the election. This is kind of unnecessary extraction on top. It's not like, for example, you've got a super anti-crypto legislature, and then you have this pathway to the president to try to mitigate all those forces acting against you. It's like, no, we kind of won on that front. This doesn't get us anything new. And like Trump himself is like clearly uninterested. He showed up to the dinner, apparently made a few comments and fucked off, as you'd expect. It's just not a real topic for him. But the risk reward ratio of this trade to me is rubbish. Like the risk is that when Democrats come into power, they just use it as leverage to triply fuck crypto. And the reward to me is unclear because the vast majority of rewards were accrued at the point of winning the election versus whatever marginal pro crypto support you get from Trump at this point. Like I don't like it. Maybe it's considering where I grew up and all the Soviet Union influence, etc. But I don't like this type of apparatus. Anyway, there goes the viewership, Don? Politics.
Yeah. Classic European takes.
Classic European takes, yes. And look, I just also don't think if you to ask the average like Trump supporter or Trump voter, whatever, and I think most reasonable people would agree that like no matter what side you're on, Washington is a massive swamp laden with like insider dealing and conflicts of interests and favoritism, etc. And historically, at least, Trump has been positioned as the guy who's supposed to clean that out. I think in his first administration, and you'll find Trump supporters saying the same thing, that the swamp was like overwhelming and there were a bunch of firings from the cabinet, and just in general, there's a bunch of wheeling and dealing. This is a great example of like swamp infrastructure, There's this crypto czar, and then his sons have World Liberty Fi are making deals with like other projects for tokens. Then there's like a Trump coin that grants you access, and like it's just unnecessary, and it doesn't look good in my view anyway. But on the upside, Don, Semler Scientific's Bitcoin holdings surpassed 4,000 BTC with latest purchase. So
the upside, huh?
Yeah, I know. Yeah. Corporate holdings. There's a really nice chart from the block. Obviously, MicroStrategy is like massive at 62.3 billion. Marathon is already up to 5. Riot has 2. Galaxy is running 1. And not all of these are obviously Bitcoin type strategies, but like a lot of them are growing very quickly. Like Metaplanet is almost up to 1 billion, etc. So I think copycatting behavior in general just sort of lends credibility to the argument that this is where the next credit bubble is forming. And where the systemic risk will come from. And I think it might not be super bullish MicroStrategy if you get a lot of these copycats, because their moat arguably gets a bit eroded. Not their financial position. I think that there are some Lindy benefits there. But just in general, like the whole idea of getting exposure to BTC, which used to be the primary driver of inflows to MicroStrategy, with ETFs in force, that's reduced by a fair bit. I think it's additionally reduced by these other vehicles and instruments offering access. A lot of this is to do with like with option strategies based around MicroStrategy stock volatility. But there's also kind of a dampening effect there going on as different financial products have started to surface, not just on the call side, but also on the put side. Like, yeah, I think this is the next thing, personally.
Yeah,
Every
I agree
cycle
with
has
you.
like a big kind of, looking back on this Widowmaker type of mechanism, or where a lot of the leverage and super gambling type stuff tends to converge. Like it was Anchor Protocol, and it was FTX, and it was GBTC, and 2021 was crazy because you had several. I think if we follow a similar credit expansion route through 2024 into 2025, it's going to be these rehypothecating public strategy BTC buyers in my mind, and I can't think of anything else that has similar momentum, similar impact, or similar mechanisms. Like it might emerge in the middle of the cycle, some crazy looping, rehypothecation, staking, whatever, leverage on top of leverage squared bullshit. But for the time being, I think the closest and best thing we have is this public BTC strategy meta. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm not. I'm from a trader perspective. I'm a big fan. From like a just general market commentator, like slash just a crypto fan of sorts. I'm not liking it. This is gonna end the same way. Yeah, we've seen it before. I think the chance that this blows up is like 90. To me, it's 99%. Like I'd be shocked if this doesn't blow up in the next like 5 years. The question is how high does it run first, and then where does it drop to, right? Like let's say we get this leverage expansion and like the entire market giga rallies and Bitcoin runs to like 300,000, and then it collapses to like 80. Like that's the huge bubble burst, right? But I mean 80K is still a lot in comparison to where it's right now. Like that's just like a 20% pullback from where we are right now. But I think that's kind of like the realm of what we're talking about, right? Like this thing goes to 200K and then pulls back to 190, 80. Like that's, I think, possible with this kind of like garbage action where a bunch of people basically just buy, or a bunch of companies buy a bunch of Bitcoin, and bet on the fact that it's just always going to go up. And I think that's just not the case. And then at some point it implodes. Going to be good trading though, so I'm down for it. This is just how the market is set up, and stopping it is impossible anyway.
Yes.
We talked about GBTC and how that was like it's just an odd thing, like how that was structured. But it doesn't really matter. We talked about Luna before it imploded.
Yeah.
Very vocally. Both of us called it kind of like unsustainable. Doesn't really matter to the market, right? Like we can say whatever we want.
Of course, when nobody's, but it's great trading.
Yeah. So like we can say whatever we want. I can tell you guys that I think this is gonna implode at some point, but it's not gonna change the fact that it's probably gonna run.
Yes.
Before.
The trade isn't like, oh, this will implode, therefore I will short it now. That's how you get Bitfinex,
Yeah, legit, like exactly 100%. This is how you sit in a position and then see everyone else make money. You lose everything. You're gonna be eventually right, but you could be like maybe the low is gonna be 110K, right? Like this thing runs and then pulls back to 110K, and you shorted at 110K, got liquidated, and then you're right, but the lowest point.
At what cost?
Yeah, like it's just, and I think that's a dangerous way to go about it.
Dude, if anything, you should start on the other leg. Like, oh, there's like price insensitive fraud going on. How do I line myself up with this while it's there? From a trader brain perspective.
From a trader perspective,
yeah.
From an investor perspective, I think this should turn off most sensible investors.
Depending on their time horizon.
Depending on the time horizon, yeah. But I don't think this. The problem, and the reason why I'm so certain it's gonna blow up, right, is basically, and this is something we've seen in crypto a lot. Basically, the moment you start seeing copycats of like of a way to do things, and those copycats get rewarded, you're gonna get infinitely more copycats.
Yes.
And those copycats are gonna get more. And basically, you're gonna add leverage and you're gonna add size to these copycats until it implodes. Like, just by the nature of human beings in crypto, just not being able to see that something is overheating. If anything, they're seeing the potential that is there to make even more money, and they're seeing the other people make money, so they feel like they're owed that money too. So basically, the problem might be small now, but the more successful these are, and the only way that they are successful is by the market just generally going up.
Yes.
The more successful they are, the worse the problem becomes.
Yeah.
And then I don't think there's any world in which this doesn't just spiral out of control if the copycats are also successful. And we've seen this cycle and cycle again.
It's everything, dude. Yeah.
Yeah.
NFTs, yield farming, DeFi.
It's anything that isn't regulated, right? Like, and I mean, it's fair enough, right? Like, it's just human behavior. Like, we just behave in bubbles, right? Like, we just want that. And then you have regulations that, like, sometimes help stop it. Oftentimes just make it even more like convoluted and just confusing, but don't really solve anything.
Yeah.
So
they like incentivize it, if anything, right? Like, a lot of the GBTC stuff was from US people being unable to get exposure to BTC. So
because it's done poorly, you try to prevent the bubble, and you do it poorly, you're gonna make it even worse.
100%. Oh well, who knows? I mean, it's kind of the end. You know the end of the movie, but you don't know how long it's gonna take and what happens. It's part of the
in
plot,
between.
You know, like, oh, that guy is 100% his dad or something, or like there's gonna be a big reveal, and this guy was a good guy all along, but all the twists and turns in between, God knows. Major US banks in early talks for Major US banks in early talks for joint stablecoin venture. And these are some pretty big boys coming in. JP Morgan, Bank of America, Citigroup, and other major US banks are in early discussions to form a potential consortium to launch a stablecoin. Okay.
I'm so bullish stablecoins, man.
I know, USDC to $2. I mean, no. I mean, I think good luck undoing the USDT moat. They are so ingrained in crypto. They have so much trust. They're so battle tested. They're good at, like, even law enforcement adherence and freezing stolen funds. Way better than Circle. Way more responsive. They're also like one of the most profitable. I mean, per employee, they're the most profitable company in the world.
Yeah,
I'm pretty
insane.
sure. And they're just
also they surpassed Germany in US Treasury.
Yeah, they're like a country. It's basically a country in terms of how many dollars they have. The only way it could go wrong for them is if the stablecoin regulation that comes through ends up being like just they try to regulate them out of existence. But I think Tether's like too big for that.
Yeah, I think they have too much money.
Yeah, too much money.
I don't want to step on the Trump fans' toes again after what I said earlier, but I think they have so much money that they can buy their way out of it, as long as Trump is president. With Democrats, I think, like, in 3 years, 4 years, I see a chance. Like, if the Democrats win the presidency, then I'd be like more worried for the dominance of Tether. But I think under Trump, I just don't see it. Like, they're too rich. The Tether guys are too rich, have too much influence. The only way to shut them down, I think, would be by, like, an ideology more so than just, we need to, like, it's just no competition. They're too rich.
Yeah.
They're too crypto.
They're everything. SafeMoon CEO found guilty of crypto fraud, faces up to 45 years in prison.
That's fucking crazy.
SafeMoon was an insane cult back in the day as well.
Yeah. Cannot believe that stuck around for so long.
I know.
Like, every day that kept going, I was like, how is this still going? Like, everyone knows it's a scam, but
the thing is that had insane normie reach as well.
Yeah,
like the people on crypto Twitter were like, "Hey, this seems really dumb. Like, what the fuck's going on?" And then the average
just listen
normie,
to the name, dude. Like, what the fuck?
SafeMoon. I mean, it's a banger. It's like internet computer protocol in terms of nominative determinism or whatever. But also, I found some of the details funny. It's like, according to US prosecutors, while the project told investors that half of the 10% fee would be locked in a liquidity pool, prosecutors said that Caroni and co-conspirators fraudulently diverted millions in liquidity from the pool for personal gains. That's like a kind of how a rug pull works, right?
Yeah.
And then this part was really funny. While Caroni claimed company executives did not hold or trade SafeMoon, prosecutors said they repeatedly bought and sold cryptocurrency to make millions in illicit profits, which they concealed through a labyrinth of private, unhosted wallets, transaction routing, and pseudonymous accounts on centralized exchanges. That's like basically how all the money is made in meme coins, or at least a lot of that same behavior, right? Pull LP, side wallets, bundling. That's the trenches, you know? And clearly it's not very legal.
No.
Maybe that's a controversial take or whatever, but there's just, things don't change, right? It was SafeMoon in 2021, trenches in 2025 and 2024, but a lot of this like promise one thing, and then when you actually get liquidity, and if anything, it's become more sophisticated, I think.
The thing is,
gone.
Sorry, the thing that always confuses me with these things is that they didn't even need to do all these promises. They had already won, you know?
Yes,
like
100%.
No one really gave a shit that they gave those promises. They're rallying way before those promises were made, but they just had to like go all in on the fraud instead of just counting their win. Like I'm always confused when people just do like they make promises that they're not keeping, instead of like, and I think a lot of the meme coins do this differently nowadays. They don't just give any promises. They're just like, oh, I'm a meme coin, I'm gonna rug you. And it's a very different story. But back then, like there were still these kind of promises and people were still stupid. But 45 years, it's kind of wild. I mean, I'm all for it. But throwing your life away because you're making stupid promises on a coin that would have gone up even without those promises, that's a little bit embarrassing.
Unsafe moon for sure. That's all I had. I think it's a pretty long episode, pretty decent summary. Also, BTC's been going up the entire time, so
send it.
That's clearly causative as far as us pressing record and people deciding to buy.
Oh yeah, that was actually the peak of bottom.
Yeah, I know, right? This is the best looking 5-minute chart I've ever seen in my 8 years of trading crypto. So
I'm on the 30-second chart right now, and I like what I'm seeing.
Yeah, I mean, the 1 minute is just vertical accumulation. OTC desks, I heard they have fewer than 40 BTC at this point.
That's such a good meme.
The well is dry, bro.
It's such a good meme.
Fucking banger. Cool, man. That's all from us. Before you click off, please leave a like on the video. Leave us a comment, even though there's a bunch of spam in the comments. We still read all the real ones. Thank you to Woo for supporting the show. The links are available in the description below. Hope you'll have a fantastic weekend. Hope you didn't get faked out too hard by the No Friday show. Here we are on Saturday. And we'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.